What's happening? Well, working on Stormy, moving some sheet metal around here on the inner portion of this fender well as down here. I've also removed that support for this fender. I want to show that to you guys, let you know some more of the damage that happened after I ran over that big old chunk of angle iron. I tried getting this on video and it really didn't show just how much this inner lip had been bent outwards. It really wouldn't have been able to come across as severe as it was on video, so it's easier just for me to show you the after of me actually taking this sheet metal and bending it in so that it was basically a 90-degree angle again, as opposed to it sticking out. It was actually sticking out like this. The same applies down here. This portion was actually curled up pretty good. I went ahead and straightened that out. Not that you'd ever be able to see it, but it just was driving me nuts that it was still dented or folded over like that. Before I forget, just for review, there's that portion of the frame that got whacked with that, basically what was in essence a piece of 3-inch angle iron, and me hitting that thing going about 75 miles an hour. But there's that whack that it took out of the frame. Painted it all up, that way it doesn't rust. Speaking of painting things so that they don't rust, so areas where the overspray or the spray when the truck went through the paint also hit the fastener, I obviously have to get new fasteners and new parts. So I will be hitting these areas, these spots where you'll never see them. I never leave raw metal. I will always go back through and hit those with some flat black paint. So for example, here's an area where that mounting bracket mounted to the bed itself, that'll get painted just to make sure there's no rust issues, as well as, you know, the back side of this thing. Just making sure again that there's nowhere for rust to get started. Speaking of brackets, here's the one that I pulled out of the truck. You can see how it's got this little bow in it that really isn't supposed to be there. One thing I will say, the welds held up great. No cracking of the welds. It just bent this piece of metal out that way. Not too bad, really, when you think about it. But look at that divot that it took out of there. But yep, no issue with the welds. The welds held. And the bracket, probably, I could have just bent that back into shape, but went ahead and picked up a new bracket. Now, quickly, these brackets come in raw metal. So what I did is I gave it a little bit of a bath in alcohol and then hit it with a few coats of flat black paint. Really, any generic flat black will do. That way, there's no worry about this thing rusting or prematurely discoloring or anything like that, being unsightly underneath the truck. So guys, with that, I'm gonna get back to work, but I wanted to just leave y'all with this. I mean, anytime you're working with the sheet metal, you're removing parts or you've had to, replace damaged parts, go back through, kind of make a mental note of everywhere that you had to remove those parts. Make sure there's no witness marks or anything like that in the metal that could potentially start to rust. And anytime you drill into any sheet metal, if you're moving things around, for example, fender wells trying to make more room for, or fender liners, I should say, if you're trying to make more room for bigger tires. If you do end up drilling holes in that sheet metal, make sure that you chase it with paint. That way you don't give rust an extra place to get started. So anyway, just a bit of a top tip for you. I'm going to get this mount or this support put back in the truck. Still waiting for the actual fender liner. I can't really do anything until I get to the point where I can get the fender liner, put the clips in the fender liner for the little screws that go and hold this thing together. So still waiting on that part, but I can at least get this support swapped over. No big deal. And of course the support, I'm painting this thing. It's got fender liners, so you'll never be able to see this part. And usually when you're chasing something with paint as a rust inhibitor, or at least a rust retarder, if you will, it's always in places where you'll never see this stuff again. But again, those are the places that can end up failing. So anyway, bit of a top tip from yours truly. I'm going to get back to work, start working on this thing. Oh yeah, one other thing, don't forget your Loctite. Anytime you're removing fasteners and reapplying fasteners, if you notice that they did have Loctite on them, always hit them with a little bit of that blue Loctite. It'll keep things from rattling around and causing you a bit of a headache. I know that not using Loctite has come back to bite me. So again, that's just a little bit of a word from experience. Blue Loctite is your friend, but a little bit of blue Loctite is your friend. A lot of bit of blue Loctite is like a really bad hangover in some cases if you have to work on it again. So anyway, that's a wrap. Y'all have a great one. Adios.